Hello my fellow bass players. So in the poll for what you want to learn this month, I noticed that the clear winner was music theory / writing bass lines and solos. And that's why in today's lesson, I'm going to give you an insight into some of my absolute favorite ways to write bass lines. Composing is often presented as this mysterious skill that you either have or you don't. And while there is a little bit of magic to it, it's 100% a learnable skill with set processes that you can use. And by the end of this lesson, you will have learned one of my absolute favorite processes that I use all the time, and I think it will work very well for you too. I'm going to compose a bass line for you right now using this process, so without further ado, here's a breakdown of how it works. A lot of bass lines are built around some kind of simple chord progression. One of my favorites is 1, flat 3, 4, flat 6, 5, and that's what we're going to use today, but some other common examples include 1, 5, 6, 4, 6, 4, 1, 5, and there's loads more. We're going to be in the key of E minor, so the chord progression is E minor, G, A minor, C, B7. 90% of the time, the bass plays the root notes of each chord on beat 1, so let's just start by playing the roots in a funky rhythm. Alright, so it sounds okay, but it's not that musical yet. Hitting the root note on beat 1 is very important, but you're going to have to add some passing notes here and there to make it more interesting. Passing notes are basically just notes between the chords that give your bass line a bit more movement and musicality. Passing notes can either be diatonic, which means that they're in the key of the song that you're playing in, or they can be chromatic, which means that they're outside of the key and they give it some nice spice and color. So now I'm going to play our bass line again, but I'm going to add some passing notes in between the roots of each chord. So now it's starting to sound like a real bass line. In fact, for some styles of music, you could just play exactly that for a whole verse and you might be fine. But usually when you're playing funk or rock, you still want there to be a little bit more variation. One thing that's really common in these styles is to add octaves to your bass line. So I'm going to play exactly our bass line again, but on those last two chords, I'm going to add octaves to them. Okay, so we've managed to create a pretty good 2-bar groove, but most bass lines don't just play the same 2 bars over and over, so we've got to turn our 2-bar phrase into an 8-bar phrase. I usually like to give my bass lines some kind of structure. The one that we're going to use today, which is also one of my absolute favorites, is ABAC, which means that you basically start with a little 2-bar segment, and then you play a slightly different 2-bar segment, then back to the first 2-bar segment, and then finally you end with a new 2-bar segment. Some other common structures you can try out are AABA, ABCA, and a lot more. So we already have our A part. I think I'm going to have the B part be almost the same, but just with a slightly different ending. Now all that we need is the C part, and then we have the full bass line completed. For the C part, it's pretty common to change up the chord progression a little bit, and that's exactly what I'm going to do here. Sometimes the C part is also called the turnaround. So I'm going to start this part by just playing 4 8th notes on G, followed by 4 8th notes on A, and then a hit on B. Now we're in the very last bar of the 8-bar phrase, and this is a really good place to add a fill that will add some spice and indicate that the whole phrase is coming to an end. So as you might have noticed, I'm a big fan of bluesy fills, and I think for this bass line, I'm going to end it with this one. So now the whole of the C part sounds like this. We've got all of the individual sections for the bass line finished. Now let's hear how it sounds when we put it all together. Feel free to grab your bass and play along with me, or just sit back and listen. So there you go, a pretty solid bass line composed in around 10 minutes. Just to recap, the steps that we went through to compose this bass line were: 1. Pick a chord progression. 2. Play the root notes using a simple rhythm. 3. Add passing notes. 4. Add other notes for spice and movement like octaves, fifths, and sevenths. 5. Decide the structure. 6. Write complementary phrases that follow that structure. 7. Put it all together and practice. This is a really good process for writing bass lines from scratch in styles like pop, rock, and funk. If you're writing a bass line for someone else's song, you could actually follow a very similar process, except you probably wouldn't be able to choose the chord progression or the structure. Of course, there's loads of different ways to approach composition, so don't feel as though you've got to limit yourself to only this, but it is a process that works very well for a variety of styles, so definitely recommend trying it out and seeing what incredible bass lines you can come up with. That's it for today's lesson. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss out on future uploads. And if you want to take your playing to the next level, become a member of the Basecamp Patreon page, where you'll get weekly lessons and tutorials, as well as immediate access to my exclusive back catalogue of over 25 videos. Thanks for coming here and practicing with me, and I'll see you in the next lesson.